Welcome back to another episode of Sports Medicine on Tap. My name is Brandon O'Line. I'm sitting here at Neck of the Woods Brewing Company with my good friend Dr. Frey, drinking a good old sour, courtesy of Neck of the Woods, on this beautiful late October evening. Dr. Frey, how you doing?
I'm great. Pumpkin chino porter.
There you go. You
That's
can't
the way
beat
to
it,
go.
right?
Yeah, late October.
It's late October. I need to start jumping the train to the darker stuff. The sours here are just
I
too
think
good.
you're being deceived by the phenomenal weather we've been having. Yeah,
100%. And I mean, I think it's going to be like 80 degrees tomorrow, something crazy. So it's like,
know.
it doesn't quite make any sense.
I don't know if you've had this experience or if you've noticed it, but I feel like as fall approaches, oftentimes there's like a stretch of bad weather. It gets really cold, or it's rainy, or it's really windy a day or two, and like it's like beautiful leaves, everything's on the ground.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
But not this year.
Yeah.
Every day's been beautiful.
Oh, it's been
so
great.
those leaves are just like hanging on the trees, and it's like it's just, I don't know, it's the most beautiful I've seen. Yeah, it's pretty incredible to drive around here.
It's fantastic.
and
And
see the
it's funny you say that, because the worst part about like having all the leaves is when they get a good rain and they just get stuck.
Yeah,
and they get muddy and all mucky. I've been able to create this gigantic pile of leaves for my son in my front yard, and it's fantastic. It is like larger than this table. It's like 4 feet tall. He like gets lost
bombing
in there. And so I have like this really crappy like battery operated leaf blower. So I just been using one battery's worth a day, just kind of getting it closer away from the street, move it over. And he just loves it. He goes out there, he's like, playing the leaves. So he just goes out there.
I remember when we first bought our house, we first got our place in Hannaffield, and first fall, it was a pretty good fall. We were a bunch of leaves, piled them all up. My son was like really, really young, so it was probably a little bit early for him to do it. And then there with my daughter and one of her friends, and I'm like, let's go. And I go bombing in, and they're all just looking at me. And I stand up, and they're like, I don't know, Dad.
Yeah, I know about all that.
I was like,
yeah, no, it's
I've been waiting for this.
Similar thing. Like my kid was like, he was just looking at me like, what are you doing? I was like, no, dude, this is all
fun.
it's all about. Just jump in there. But I tell you what, I remember I was much smaller, I guess, last time I played in leaves. They were definitely more giving before I hit the ground a little hard. I was like, oh man. So gave me a little bit of that yard work back. You know who got docs for that?
I do.
Our good friends over at Virtual Orthopedics and Spine. Our podcast is sponsored by them. They have you covered from runner's knee to dog walker's hip to yard work back and laptop ribs. They have a doc for that. So find the right specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho. So tonight is Smorgasbord. And these are like one of my favorite episodes to do, because we go all over the place. We talk a little bit about everything.
Cool stuff.
And it's kind of from just last night was one of the first major league sports equinoxes. We had the World Series, hockey, NBA, and NFL all on the same Monday night. So it was a bunch of stuff going on.
Right.
And so I'm scouring Twitter, also known as, or X now, if you will, and all these different things. And I have, my buddies know I do the podcast, so they send me videos of stuff happening all the time.
Yeah.
And there was a crazy ankle dislocation last night, in the Utah Jazz game.
Yeah.
So I saw that, and I was like, oh, man, we got to bring that up. And it's like, but we have so many other good things to talk about already.
We'll get to that one.
And we'll get to that one, right? So I think we should start with some stuff that we want to follow up on, because I think it's really interesting now that I have a feeling a mild attachment to these athletes who come back from these crazy injuries. Now it's like, oh man, we talk so much about this guy, and our predictions. Sometimes our predictions are wrong, sometimes our predictions are right.
More right than wrong.
To cover one real quick. Tua came back this week. He cleared concussion protocol. We had that great talk with Dr. Harwood, and we went through all that stuff, and he's back now. So that's one another follow-up. But the big one, I think, at least for the NFL, is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is back. The guy blew out his knee twice, the same knee, multi-ligament surgeries. Back in, last year, September 30th, he has MCL meniscus repaired, and then November 14th of last year, he gets his ACL done. Yeah. And now he's back playing in the NFL, and the Browns are all over the place.
And
but
they just beat the Ravens.
They just beat the Ravens with Jameis Winston, the backup quarterback, after their starting quarterback tore his Achilles, another topic that we couldn't talk about just because of timing or whatnot.
Right.
So, never-ending saga, and I think of just the NFL, just football, right? It's just one of those sports with just a high injury percentage rate, and it's just like it gives us plenty of opportunities to talk about different things.
So his injury was pretty gruesome. It was.
Oh yeah, it was.
And we kind of do every now and again sort of like the gruesome injuries, and I actually think it makes a great episode, just like a gruesome injury entire episode, and even especially if we can get like clips and stuff like that, because it's hard to turn away from those. And but his was one of those injuries, right? And it's the second time he's had one of those on his knee, which is incredible. And he originally injured it in Georgia, when, in college, and I actually didn't know he had that injury until he had the second injury,
Right, same.
and
Yep.
I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I can't believe he came back from that first one.
Yeah.
And now here he is, and so the chances of coming back the second time, not great.
No.
Not great. Here he is.
And here he is, and he played 2 games, rushed for 74 yards and a touchdown, had 1 catch for 10 yards. And it's just like he's not the primary back yet, but he's definitely he's slowly
Probably
increasing.
won't be long.
It won't be long because,
Yeah.
we saw videos of him early in the summer
Yeah.
squatting 600-some pounds.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, this guy's strong.
Some people are superhuman.
And,
I think it's incredible.
I think it also just gives, an ode to, like, how important strength really is.
Right.
Like, granted, I don't think saying squatting 600 pounds is going to make you a great NFL running back, but
Right.
being that strong certainly helps.
Certainly, it doesn't hurt. Great equalizer.
Yeah,
Right.
it definitely helps, getting all those muscles super strong and doing all that rehab and all that stuff. It's just like,
Yeah.
it helps have these people to come back. And it's just like a reminder for even those younger athletes, high school, even young college athletes who, like, they just don't buy into their rehab or, like, stuff like that. Like, I see it sometimes too often.
Such
It's
a
like,
big
no,
part of the equation.
no, we got to get the strength back. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And then you see strength deficits, and that kind of comes with range of motion or, like, whatever the cascade of things come down to it.
And then people are blown away once they actually commit, and all of a sudden, like, oh man,
Yeah.
like I feel so much better. This is, and people are, I think, very frequently surprised at what a big difference that makes, the therapy part of the equation. Yeah.
And we're talking about a guy who came back from 2 major knee surgeries in just about a year.
I know.
Like, his last surgery was in November, so he's not even a year out of his ACL surgery, and he's back.
Yeah.
And he only had just a little MCL and a meniscus done right before the ACL on top of it, just
Right.
to sprinkle some more.
But
on
that
it.
was the same injury, right?
Right.
They just staged
Just
the
staged
surgery.
it, right.
Yeah. So and our disclaimer we throw out there every time. We don't know exactly what had happened in his surgery. We don't have access
Right.
to his medical charts. We just know what was released publicly.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, what I take away from that when they stage it like that is that they're getting to the MCL early.
Right.
And typically you don't want to do the ACL early. If you do the ACL too early, especially before someone has their full range of motion or appropriate range of motion, you're potentially dooming them to a stiff knee afterwards. So typically you want to have full range of motion before you do the ACL. So doing the ACL is not a race. You have plenty of time to do the ACL.
Right.
You really want to do the ACL. And people sometimes get frustrated by this. Like, we see it all the time. Right? High school athletes or a college athlete comes in and they're like, why are you waiting 3 weeks? Or why
Yeah.
are you waiting 4 weeks? And, like, we got to get your motion. Like,
Yeah.
we can't just rush. Even if we were doing a separate surgery sometimes, we're still not doing the ACL, we're waiting.
Yeah.
However, the MCL, there's usually 2 options, right? There's reconstruction or repair. In this scenario, he had a torn meniscus. I'm sure his knee was exceedingly unstable. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Right. Yep.
It's sometimes a lot of surgery due to the ACL and the MCL, and especially a meniscus at the same time. People run the risk of getting very stiff just from all of that surgery
Right.
at
All that
once.
trauma. Right.
Yeah. So frequently what will happen is you bring them in, you do an MCL repair, not reconstruction, repair, and then you'll augment that with something called an internal brace, which is that was a big advancement when Arthrex came out with the internal brace, and this was really one of, like, the main uses. It's basically like a thick, I don't want to say rope, but a very thick suture that bridges that gap from the thigh bone to the shin bone
Right.
on the inside there. So it takes a lot of stress off of the repair, so you can be a lot more aggressive. But,
Right.
And that doesn't hold up forever. Eventually that would break. You need the tissue to heal,
Right.
and then the tissue then takes over.
Correct.
But it does a great job of getting you moving earlier, getting your activity up earlier, and taking and protecting your repair. So presumably that's why they split those 2 up. They did an MCL repair. They probably did an internal brace, and then they fixed his meniscus at that particular point in time.
Right.
Then they get him moving, get him doing some stuff, doing some rehab and whatnot. And once he has his full range of motion back and he's got some of his strength back, then they
Yep.
come back and do the ACL at that
Yeah.
particular point.
But I think, with that being said, of that, the stage surgery, and I think that's another thing why it's so important to have someone who's like Nick Chubb is probably so strong that, like, having these double, like, not back to back, there's about 6 weeks in between,
Yeah.
He probably made some great strength gains in that 6
that
weeks.
period of time.
And just like, we always push prehab for ACLs,
Yeah.
just like singular ACLs,
Yeah.
It's like you got to get that you come out, when you go in stronger, you come out stronger.
Yeah.
It's like, I tell people this all the time.
Yeah.
It's frustrating too, like when an athlete doesn't buy into that prehab and they come out, then they wonder why, like, they're having some issues coming out of it or all this. Well,
Right.
you gotta get stronger. the quicker he gets stronger, the better it is, just in general.
So for him, I think actually his first week back, right? Like 27 rushes, 74 yards. Not spectacular. Not bad.
Yeah,
Right?
he got hit the pay dirt. He scored a touchdown his first game back.
Touchdown.
I mean, I'm sure that was a bit planned in the playbook. Like, if we get close, give him the ball in the 1 yard.
Against a very good defense.
Yeah.
And beat a rival. Pretty amazing. And then Jameis Winston,
Yeah.
a lot of credit to that guy too. But I don't think the verdict's still out, right? Like
Right.
we don't know that his knee's hasn't just blown up on him
Right.
the next day. We don't know. So pretty amazing that he's even out there on the field and doing it. Let's wait and see how this plays out over the next few weeks. I was a doubter, I think, going in.
Yeah.
I had my suspicions that his ability to actually come back again a second time, but
and I think that's
guy's
it
amazing.
though. I think it's the second time around, which is I think. It's funny. We kind of both mentioned we should have re-listened to what our predictions were the last time, because sometimes we forget.
Right.
But even now, like you think about it, someone with 2 of these major knee dislocations, super crazy injuries, and all these surgeries. I don't know if they staged it last time. That's 4 surgeries in his knee,
right?
Major surgeries, and he's coming back to play at the highest level,
Amazing.
Playing the NFL.
Yeah.
It's not like. I don't want to downplay any other sports. It's not like he's playing other sports where it's a little safer. He's playing football where he can easily just take another helmet to the knee or something crazy could happen, and then it's all over again.
And it's all about cutting and pivoting and jumping and twisting.
And he's a running back, and he's doing all that.
And twisting.
Correct.
Yeah, it's incredible. Really, really.
And then, it's just one of those things where it's like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And like you said, who knows what his workload is going to be going forward, if they're going to use him more, use him less, you're going to load management.
I hope they go a little bit slow. I really do.
Let's not go crazy here.
And they're set up. They have some decent, their situation's pretty good. They can go a little bit slow. They don't have to go crazy.
And they're also in a position, at least for the Cleveland Browns, now they have the opportunity to re-identify themselves because they have a whole new quarterback, which changes up everything in the offense.
For sure.
I think they changed offensive play caller, coach-wise, so they have a whole new mindset who's making all the calls. So who knows what happens with them? They could turn their season around, and next thing you know, they're in the hunt or something.
I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking the Cleveland Browns here. Steelers looking good though.
They are.
The defense is looking solid.
The defense is very good.
Everyone's questioning if Russell Wilson's the real deal, but so far his 2 games back after that calf.
Yeah, he looks very good. I'm a little nervous that he's lost a little bit of oomph on the arm. Like you saw him underthrow a couple passes yesterday, but then 3 plays later, throws a laser to Pickens on the side. Like my God, where did that come from? Yeah. And I'm not sure what it is that he does. I don't understand, and I guess it's just the quality that good quarterbacks have. Seeing players get open before they're actually open, spreading the ball around and whatnot. But the offense is so much more exciting. It's so much more dynamic with him under center, and there's no way to quantify it. I thought Fields looked very good.
Right.
I was really excited with his play. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, this is the best I've seen the offense in a long time. Yeah. What is he doing differently?
Right. Man? I think, I'm not going crazy with reviewing film with the Pittsburgh Steelers specifically or Russell, but I think at least from what I could grasp is Justin Fields can extend a play. He can make some things happen because he's super athletic and he's super quick and he's he's out there doing all this stuff. And I think he managed the games really well and did well. It's not like he played poorly. He's not where those other true game managers would just do the bare minimum and they just get a touchdown, 100 yards. And he did pretty well, and he could run it.
Yeah.
And then everybody else fell in place, but the defense with T.J. Watt playing at full capacity,
that guy's
not
amazing.
injured, unreal. That strip sack that he had and fumble recovery, all in one one motion.
And it's like when oh man, we're desperate. And here comes T.J. Watt. It's incredible.
And I mean, overall, that game was pretty good till the fourth quarter. It was still a close game.
How about the Giants running back?
Tracy.
Turbo, Tyrone Tracy, and they switched from wide receiver. And I remember thinking oh, there's a long shot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looked really good. Moves. That guy is fast.
Yeah. And I think he got banged up a little bit last night. I got some updates. He went in the medical tent a couple times. He's not coming back. And the next thing you know, he's starting the second half. And he's
But I think he got concussed down the stretch. Cam Hayward, right? He's always Walter Payton Award kind of a thing. Really, really good guy, makes a tackle, and you see immediately you see Hayward pointing his finger get out of here.
Yeah. And it's I get it from an opponent standpoint, get the guy out, but it's also no.
No, I think it's genuine concern.
Yeah, genuine concern.
He's out, right?
Yeah, because he hit his head pretty hard, and that's one of those situations where like it's like one of those tough spots when like the ball carrier gets his arms trapped and nothing but his body going back.
We talk about that all the time.
And then his head
can't
goes
stop
back.
it.
Like there's nothing you could do. Like it's just the nature of the beast. It happens.
Yeah.
And then it's the NFL's got the eyes in the sky. They got everything going for it. And it's pretty obvious. I mean, the guy looked shooken up pretty bad.
Right.
When he came in, you could tell his eyes. He was like, you could tell he probably had like some photosensitivity. He wasn't feeling too great.
Yeah.
And I mean, it happens. Nature of the beast.
Not that we're gonna go too far down this road, but what a perfect lead into Tua was the last big one, the last big concussion we talked about, and here he is again. Got through the first game.
Yeah, I mean, he did well, and people are trying to say that Tyreek Hill might be fantasy football related now, or like relevant rather is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
he might be good again, so we'll see. I mean, from someone who has Tyreek Hill in a couple leagues, like I hope he is, but it stinks that I'm weighing that all down on Tua can stay healthy. But it's also kind of funny, or however you want to view it, of like Tua slid and the crowd at Miami, it sounded like they just won the Super Bowl.
Oh, I missed that. Really?
He had one play where he slid. They slid, and the whole crowd erupted. They were like, "Yes, finally!" But I mean, it's just something that he needs to do.
He has to. Yes, please, just do it. Yeah.
Like I know, like these guys have some stuff in their contract where they can't like go skiing or like crazy mountain biking. Put it in his contract. He can't dive. Like just put it in there and just save yourself a little bit. Figure a way out.
When I was a resident, I got married when I was a resident, and we did our honeymoon in Hawaii. Really fortunate to be able to do that and whatnot. So my program, the program director sits me down before we leave, and he's like, "Here's a list of the things that you're not allowed to do."
Yep.
He's like, "You're not allowed to fly in a helicopter, and you're not allowed to I don't know if you know the Haleakala, and you can rent these like bikes with these like huge brakes, and you come bombing down."
Oh, gee,
yeah, and it's fun, and the reason I know it's fun is because I did one of those things, I'm not allowed to.
Yeah.
But this whole list of like, you can get injured doing this, you get injured doing this, and there really was no contract, but like he did not want you to do it, and it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think the next follow-up that we have is another big return to sport coming from the NBA is Lonzo Ball. What a story this kind of came out, and it's ironic of how I've come across the Lonzo Ball articles and stories twice now, almost by accident, and it's always like once I open the Pandora's box, like, oh my God, this is a great topic.
Right.
This is so much stuff going on. So back in early of January of this year, we talked about Lonzo Ball, episode 89, and it was reported that he had cartilage replacement surgery. And we kind of tag teamed it. We talked about Gabriel Landeskog from the Avalanche in the NHL, who also had the procedure.
Yeah.
But he was about 2 months after Lonzo Ball did. And, Lonzo Ball missed a bunch of time. He had a torn meniscus back in 2022. He missed 2 years of basketball.
Right.
And he had a couple different procedures. They did a scope. They did this. And then he kind of hit like a wall every time he tried to go ramp it up. Couldn't get past like high-level activity.
Yeah.
And so then we were talking about how he's getting his cartilage replacement surgery, and then we were even questioning that return of like, I don't know if he's going to make it. Basketball players don't do well when they have these big cartilage injuries. We listed some, notable names from the past. And then I saw this past weekend or past week, he's back in the NBA. He played.
Yeah.
And he made a couple shots. He's on a minute restriction. I think he's about like 14 to 16 minutes per game right now.
Yeah.
And they're handling the situation pretty well. And then I'm reading the article. I'm like, and then they say, yeah, he underwent a cartilage transplant, a meniscus transplant surgery. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
A what?
A what? I was like, and then my first thought was like, you can transplant a meniscus? And then I texted you, and you were like, oh, yeah. And I was like, I didn't know you could even do this.
Yeah. There are certain surgeries in the world of orthopedics that we consider to be what we would say salvage procedures. Mm-hmm. It's less than ideal if you're at that point.
Right.
And this would fall into that category.
Right.
It is something that is done and can be done, and I've done them. Oftentimes when you're at that point, if you're doing a meniscus transplant along with a cartilage restoration procedure, your goal, really the ultimate goal, is not to get back to playing basketball or playing basketball at a high level or whatever the sport may be.
Right.
Really the goal is to try to get that person to be able to walk around without pain, live a semi-active life, and in a young person who's certainly too young to go down the road of arthroplasty.
Right.
And this situation arises every now and again. It's a difficult situation to be in because, like I said, it's somewhat a salvage procedure. And so even in the best case scenario, oftentimes like it's not perfect. And we could do a whole show on this, and we probably will at some point. So I'll go through some of the things a little bit quickly, but some of the fact, like there's something, you know what a bucket handle tear the meniscus, right? Like, so we see that all the time. So your big tear that goes almost the entire length of the meniscus, and a portion of the meniscus, the inner portion, flips into the middle of the knee. So then we go and we push that back to where it's supposed to be, and a bunch of stitches that go across. So it really is almost like a bucket handle meniscus repair, but you're repairing the meniscus back to the capsule. And it's kind of gone through an evolution. First, you wanted the meniscus to be really, it has to be sized appropriately. Right? Like you do sizing that based on an MRI, and then you order and you kind of wait. You're on hold until the appropriate donor comes in, and it has to be sized pretty much correctly. Then. So obviously it comes from a cadaver, like when we say donor, like it's a transplant from a cadaver. And so someone who's passed away and donated this. And then, for a while it's like just sew it into place. Now, there's something called a root tear, which is really gaining a lot of popularity and being noticed. I think 3 or 4 years ago, we were just figuring it out. More than 10 years ago, we were just figuring out root tears. And now they're becoming commonplace. Most people know about root tears. So the meniscus is like a gasket between the thigh bone and the shin bone. It's sort of cushion, spreading out some force. But if the meniscus itself isn't anchored in the front and in the back, it kind of just squirts out of the way, right? So that's where the root comes in. The anchor has to attach it down to bone. So there's one version of this where you just sew the cadaver meniscus into to the capsule around the knee. Then there's another version of this which works better, where there's little bone plugs, and you can put these little drill holes and put the bone plug in. And once the bone plugs is in, then it's almost like a bucket handle repair, and you're just sewing it around. And then there's another version of this called like a dovetail, where there's a bone bridge that connects the front and the back, and you actually take out a little bone bridge, a little dovetail bone bridge on the top of the shin bone. You slide that in. Oh wow! And then you just do the finish, do the repair. And medial meniscus is different than lateral meniscus in terms of success rates and whatnot. And sort of what their main function is. But the typical goal when you do this surgery, though, is not get back to play basketball. It happens. We were talking before. I have a patient who had the good fortune of getting back to college basketball. The goal is not college or pro basketball. The goal is active life, just not arthritic in 5 years, like that kind of a thing. So I hope he's able to continue going. This story is not over.
No, for sure.
Let's see where this goes.
I think a lot of it depends on a lot of different things. I think the load management thing, which is a big hot topic in the NBA.
Sure,
it's been for a couple years now, and it's only
we have Embiid and like that. I worry that. Maybe that's what he needs.
Embiid might need, but I don't know. We got to find a donor with that big of a meniscus.
We need a big donor.
That's going to be, I think, a challenge. But I think the management of it's going to be interesting. And then I think, like you said, the story's not over yet. But also, like we mentioned before, Gabriel Landeskog of the NHL is about 2 months behind Lonzo.
Right.
So it's curious. We're in like almost November now. So it's going to be curious coming around the new year in January. We might have to retouch on this topic to see what Gabriel Landeskog's doing.
You're right.
Seeing how Lonzo Ball's doing.
Yeah.
And seeing what's going on. Because
set the alarm.
Yeah.
Set the timer.
Stay tuned until January, folks. We're going to come back to this one and see what's going on. Just something we wanted to touch up on. And like I said, I think it's so interesting now doing this show for, as long as we've been doing it and just being able to follow up on this stuff now. We have like longer term, like we talked about this 10 months ago.
Right.
And now it's back in the news. Like it's kind of back and it's 10 month follow up. And
we got back when we did number 89.
Right. And, same thing with Nick Chubb. We talked about him almost over a year ago. And now here we are and he's playing again, which is crazy to think about. That's how fast time goes. And
how old we are. Me especially.
Also, while we weren't here last week, I did celebrate my birthday. So
happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So just another year around the sun. But now we're going to talk about some new stuff that happened this past weekend.
Right.
We talked a lot about football. I want to take a quick break on football, and let's go talk about the World Series. The World Series is going deep right now. Game 4, I think, is tonight or tomorrow?
Tonight, yeah. 8:08.
Yep.
They
Good
all
old-
are.
Yeah. So we're about a half hour away from first pitch on that one. But the biggest, one of the biggest,
Probably the first last pitch of the year.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. The Dodgers
Juggernaut.
just hot, on fire,
Right.
and just not stopping. Freddie Freeman is unstoppable right now. It's
I know.
crazy.
Yeah.
And his story. That's something else we should talk about.
We should.
Once it comes out some more. His ankle,
Right.
the whole thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just reported like an ankle sprain, but this guy like barely could walk, and he's still playing. Like the whole thing, which
Yeah.
is crazy.
People were relating it to Kirk Gibson. I didn't know if it quite rose to that level, but
Right.
I understand the where they're going.
Right, and the guy walk off grand slam in the first game and all this stuff. But when anything happens to Shohei Ohtani, we got to talk about him.
Shohei, right?
It's
Yeah.
Shohei.
Yeah.
He goes to slide, the guy, the
Showtime.
50-50 guy, 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases.
Yeah.
He goes to steal a base or he's running the bases, slides, and he lands awkward on his left shoulder,
Yeah.
comes up in pain.
Yeah.
He leaves. I think I'm pretty sure he left game 2.
He did.
And then he comes back for game 3 to play.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let's follow. I did some research on him last night, and it's like, let's follow up on the Shohei injury. And they were like, yeah, he came out to the game in a sling. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, he's playing with a sling on? And I think the article I read was like, Shohei's Ohtani using a real sling and an invisible sling during game 3. And I was like,
Invisible
what?
thing, just kind of keeping his arm pinned to his side.
What's
kinda.
that mean? What is this talking about? And I always think it's funny when I read headlines like, what's this really
Yeah.
mean? And so, I looked, and when he called his name for intros, you could tell there was something on it, like a black, like a strap on his shoulder, looked like a sling.
Yeah.
And he looked like it tucked in his jacket, and he ran out there fine. And then he got on base. I think he got walked on his first at bat. And then he's up there, and he's just holding his left arm. Right,
Yeah,
he's holding
his invisible
collar.
sling.
His
Yeah, yeah.
invisible sling. He's holding that thing. He's trying to run and not trying to make any translation of that shoulder because that thing's probably hurting. And I saw some videos of him swinging, and the follow through. He's really in pain.
Yeah.
Not feeling too good, but he's trying to push through.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things where in the world of sports medicine, if you're playing for the World Series, you're at the top of the top championship. You make some crazy calls and you try to push the envelope a little bit to
Right.
see if you can make things happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes the will of a human being can just supersede pain and dysfunction, and they do some crazy things. We've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim Tebow when he played with his broken leg and all
Right.
those other stuff like that. Those stories are just
Yeah.
endless when it comes to the world of sport.
So I had a few thoughts about this one. First, I watched a play happening live when it happened, and it was interesting. The way that he had gotten up when like he first got up, it did look like shoulder injury. Like the fact that he keeps his arm internally rotated and right here at his side, but I didn't see like the shoulder injury. And I thought it was moving a little bit too well to think that he had dislocated it.
Right.
So then I'm like, is it the same elbow? If it's the same elbow, you would hold your arm in a similar position, only to find out after the fact that it was not the same elbow.
Right. It was his left side.
It was the other, right, exactly. So then we find, then I start hearing some of the headlines. He had dislocated his shoulder, and I was like, well, if this is his first time dislocating, he's done. Like that's the end of the year for him. That kind of stinks. If he's dislocated in the past, maybe they get him back. Like it's just you treat the injury a little bit differently.
Correct.
But then more information came out, and it doesn't sound like it was the dislocation, which is more in line with what we were visualizing.
Correct.
Maybe a subluxation,
Yep.
where the ball slides partly out and then plops back in. And I gotta tell you, even with the subluxation, if it's not, it wasn't truly dislocation, but he partially dislocated it,
Right.
I'm a little surprised he's in there.
Yeah.
If
And
this
I
was
mean-
the first one,
And it's not like I think in the world, just the layman's terms of people who don't understand it so much, they think, oh, he didn't really fully dislocate. It's not as bad. It's like, oh, no, the damage
could be
can still
bad.
be done.
Yeah.
The bones can rub against each other hard.
Yeah.
Now, there could be
Knock
chips.
off that labrum, like cause these same
injury.
injuries. Yeah.
It changes everything, especially as when you're swinging a baseball to try to hit a ball and the velocity of all that, and then like the follow through and all these different things, these different aspects of a baseball swing.
Yeah.
It can get very aggravated very quick.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times there's a lot of instances of baseball shoulder dislocation on the backswing.
Right.
When their hand goes back, they go too far and it comes out like, oh.
It's a very good point.
And,
I
think
that is not a good position.
right.
Yeah.
That's like that open pack position of that shoulder, and that's not safe and that's not
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
So
And it was his left shoulder this time, right? So it's his left shoulder, and he bats lefty, right? Correct. Sorry.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he
It would
bats
be-
lefty, it is his back arm, and then I think that helps him.
Right.
It's a little
Right.
less at risk
Correct.
with the whole thing. And, the guy's fast. the guy can play. He's got a great eye. People walk him anyway. Yeah. So I mean,
Right.
but still, like he is such a phenomenal ball player, like generational game, organizational changing player. Just ask the Mets, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like at that point, even with the subluxation, right, the capsule has stretched a little bit. The kind of the sac that surrounds the ball and socket joint. Maybe he tore a little bit of the capsule. Maybe he tore a little bit of the labrum. It's a little looser, Let that begin to scar down and start to heal a little bit, so there's a little more stability. Don't risk the next play dislocating and then like having a bigger problem, right? Like now you need surgery. Now that kind of a thing. Like I just find like and especially when you're, I guess they weren't up 3-0 at that point. Now they're up 2-0. But like, I don't know. I think if I'm the guy making the call in that situation, first, almost any other athlete, almost any other level, it's pretty definitively no. It's Shohei, so I guess you have a little more leeway.
Right.
But he has so much on the line. He's still young. I think I say
it's real tough,
if
right?
we need you game 5, game 6,
the guy's like a $500 million athlete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's so much future in him that like I don't know. It's so you take it as like, is Shohei Ohtani with a one bad shoulder better than the next guy up with 2 healthy shoulders?
Right.
I mean, I guess the Dodgers think so, right? Like,
and he probably
is.
Right.
And I'm sure they're doing everything to protect him and all this stuff,
Yeah.
And again, he's out there holding his arm in a protected position. So, and I'm sure he's not sliding how he used to, or he's going to find a way to not use that arm at all.
Yeah.
But he's definitely not diving head first anytime soon, because his right arm just had the UCL, and his left arm is now, sublux. So he's probably not stealing as much.
No, that helps a little bit for the Yankees.
Right, for the Yankees. So hopefully they find a way to make the series a little more interesting and not go out, get swept, which I hope doesn't happen. I always like a good series.
Of course, right.
You always want to see something. And it's not like the Yankees are a bad group of guys. Like the guys they have are all all-stars. They did really well going up to this point. And they just kind of hit a little cold streak.
Yeah.
Which just kind of happens in baseball.
That's baseball.
It's baseball.
Unfortunately, yeah. Like
it's a game of failure.
When the Mets did beat the Phillies, it's not to knock. Like that's baseball. People were losing their minds, but teams go cold.
Yeah.
And it was the Mets' good fortune that the Phillies went cold when they played them. Right.
Correct.
And actually, honestly, I don't think the Mets went super cold when they played the Dodgers. The Dodgers played great.
Yeah. Right.
They're just a powerful offensive team.
Yeah, and they just have the right guys doing the right things in the right time, and that's fall baseball, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. It's like you just see these guys with these incredible stories, do all this great stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
I do worry for Shohei. Sometimes I think you start to put on the rose-colored glasses, and you're like, you know what? We'll be careful. We'll take the risk. We'll be fine. It's not going to be an issue, which is great until there's an issue, right? Like there aren't, like Robert Griffin, Carson Wentz. I don't know if it would have been different if things were handled any differently at those particular times, but like it doesn't always come up roses, right? Like sometimes serious stuff happens, and once the downward spiral begins, it's hard to break the downward spiral.
Yeah, and I think you got to at least from some kind of a business standpoint, you got to think about it. Like, is the World Series win worth it versus his contract? Like his contract's a lot of money.
Yeah. Even though it's not on the books, but it's still a lot of money. It's all deferred.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It's crazy.
So, and it's just one of those things where you'll see we'll see what happens, and if they can get away, they're up 3-0. If they can get squeeze out another win with or without him, and then hey, it was worth it.
That's what I feel like. Don't play him tonight. I want to play him tonight. If you're gonna take the risk, wait until you need to take the risk.
Like a game 7.
Like a game 7.
Right.
Like maybe this happens game 2. Sit him game 3. See how it shakes out. Sit him game 4 if you have that luxury. See how it shakes out.
Or you just put him up there and hey, look, just don't swing that much. You're up there. Because then you just get a free guy on base if they're going to walk him.
Yeah.
Or, there's stories of that too where you kind of play the decoy game. You put a guy out there. It's like, we're not going to use him.
It's just a decoy.
Just decoy.
Yeah.
I think there was a pretty story I've seen before back when the Broncos won the Super Bowl back in the Elway days with Terrell Davis when he had real bad migraines.
Right.
He apparently had a super bad migraine and they were on the goal line. He couldn't even see. And then Shanahan was like, no, just go out there. You're not getting the ball. I need you to stand out there.
Just stand there.
Just stand there. And they're going to think you got the ball and we're going to run this other play. And they scored a touchdown because everyone thought Terrell Davis was getting the ball. They don't know he can't see because his migraine's so bad. He's just out there. Yeah. And next thing you know,
that's a great story. I did not hear that.
Yeah, I think if you can catch that story on a Football Life, Terrell Davis, on the NFL Network thing, I think I caught that one day. And I was like, oh, man, that's wild.
That guy was amazing. Yeah.
What a guy, right?
Right, yeah.
So now, speaking of running backs, to kind of segue us right into another topic of tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to another running back of the 49ers because their running back room's all banged up and whatnot. We just talked about Christian McCaffrey not too long ago, who's reportedly coming back after their bye week. So they're on bye week this week for week 9, I believe it is. So week 10, there might be a Christian McCaffrey sighting in the NFL. He might be back. So we have to talk to my buddy.
Week 10. Think about that.
Right?
Yeah. But that's not rushing back.
No.
Right?
Right.
That's and we talked about it at the beginning, these calf injuries. Yeah.
And it's crazy. I look back. We talked about Christian McCaffrey and his calf strain leading into the playoffs and Lonzo Balls back in January at the same episode, 89.
How about that?
We comboed those two topics. And now here we are again, almost kind of touching on both of them.
Who knew Lonzo would be the first one back? No, I'm joking.
Right. No, really. If you think about it, like you wouldn't think that someone with a calf injury would come back way later than
he
some.
did play.
Right.
Yeah, with it at the end of the year.
Right.
But still, like, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And so, Christian McCaffrey's been doing all this good stuff and he's back, but, his replacement's been Jordan Mason.
Right.
And about 2 weeks ago when they were playing the Seahawks, he got injured. In the first half, it looked like he hurt his shoulder and he was seen on the sideline. He was pumping his arms a bunch, trying to do all this stuff just to see how comfortable he was. You could tell he was kind of discomfort.
Yeah.
And I think he either took contact or he just fell on the tip of his shoulder, which is like textbook for AC joint sprain. Yeah. And then, they reported he separated his shoulder, which is also known as we know AC joint sprain.
Yeah.
And so then he was out for the second half. He played like one play. He ran like 9 yards or something in the second half. And he's like, oh, he's good. And then he like landed kind of funny, and then he goes out and he was done.
Don't worry, we have another superstar that can fill your place.
And so then he plays, I think, last week he does fine. Mm-hmm. And then this past week he was in the game against the Cowboys, and he was only in for a short period of time, and then he got hurt again.
Yeah.
And then it came out later that the coach was reported that he re-aggravated his shoulder injury. And it's like, man, this thing's going to keep happening. Like, how often is this going to keep happening? And it's like, why is this such a repeated thing? And why isn't he better yet? Like, it's
an AC joint. And so, and actually, I think that so AC joint, there's a lot of variation in the AC joint injuries. We classify them very differently. The standard classification has been like 1 through 6, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the treatment for each one of them is very different based on the classification. But in general, 1 and 2 don't need surgery.
Right.
3 sometimes need surgery. 4, 5, 6, which are very different, pretty much always need surgery. There have been other classifications or other additions made to it, but in general, those were the numbers. And so that classification, one of it really it depends on like what direction the clavicle goes during the separation, right? But really, especially in those earlier ones, 1, 2, and 3, and really 5, are gradations of how many ligaments or how bad the ligaments are injured.
Right, yep.
And so, one of the reasons, so grade 1 is really not that bad. There's 3 main things that are stabilizing the AC joint, right? You have what we call corticoclavicular ligaments, so 2 ligaments that attach to the undersurface of your collarbone. Mm-hmm. They come from a little bone right in the front of your shoulder, underneath your shoulder blade, called the coracoid, a little finger projection sticking out there. And then there's the joint capsule between the clavicle and the acromion at the tip of your shoulder. And once they get stretched or torn or sprained, then there's a little bit of instability at the AC joint. So in grade 1 and grade 2, grade 1 typically it's just the capsule around the AC joint. Grade 2, then you start getting the corticoclavicular ligaments involved. So one of the concerns with is if you go out and you try to play, it's not just the pain that you're dealing with.
Right.
Those ligaments are already stretched or compromised and maybe not doing their job, so it doesn't take as much of an injury to finish them off, right? Or to finish off like if you had 3 things that were holding it together and now you have 1 because the other 2 have been stretched so much, it's not going to take nearly as much force to injure that 1, right? So you go from a non-surgical, this will do great, just got to give a little bit of time to like, now you need a surgery. Yeah. And which is never good. If you can avoid the surgery, avoid the surgery.
Correct.
So I don't know what grade his injury was. My gut is that it was like kind of this grade 2. Hopefully not a grade 3. But my gut was probably grade 1, grade 2 because it came back so quickly.
Right.
And then he does get re-injured. I don't think this will be a reoccurring theme, assuming that it's not worse now. It was just a re-aggravation of what he had.
Yeah.
And all he really needs is time. He just needs more time because once he heals, they do fine. You just need time to heal it.
Yeah.
Typically.
And they're they got lucky with the bye week.
Right.
And then he's also going to get lucky because he's going to have more time on the sidelines, assuming that Christian McCaffrey's going to start taking over the workload as he gets better and progresses through his rehab protocols and progression. And then, then they'll have, they have, and then their backup, Garendo, or butchering his name because I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
He did really well.
He looks good, man.
He's
fast.
Fast, man. He blew up those holes and he was just gone.
And he is a downhill runner, right? Like he just goes right into his and then
north-south, just go.
North-south and explodes. Yeah. A lot of credit to him. And that was the same thing with on the Giants with Tracy. Yeah. Just fast to the
hit the hole hard and go.
Hit the hole and go. Yeah, exactly.
You can't. You just it's just one of those things where, and again, it's just crazy that the 49ers just somehow always find a guy who can just run the ball really well, and a credit to their offensive line making all the blocks.
I'm sure that's a big part of this.
I'm sure their offensive line holds it down pretty well, and they can make anyone look really good. And then you put someone as good as Christian McCaffrey behind them, then they look really good.
Right.
And then it's like makes sense why they go to the Super Bowl and everything.
That's why they're so good. Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure.
And then I think last topic of the night here, we have another injury coming from the NFL. The Jaguars receiver Christian Kirk, who was a hot topic in the trade rumors, goes down with a clavicle fracture, is out for the year now, no longer on the trade table. The appeal is not quite there anymore. Yeah, that's one of those unfortunate things. Those darn clavicles, man, that's football players that take a lot of impact. Yeah.
These injuries can vary in terms of severity. So this is clavicle fracture, so a broken bone as opposed to dislocation or separation.
Right.
We talked about SC joint dislocation. Speaking of which, Marcus Brown, he's done. For the, you're right. So like bad, it's a scary situation, right? We just finished talking about AC joints. That's the other side of the clavicle.
End of it. Now we're talking about the middle.
Now we're in the middle, right? So right, we break them up to classified 1, 2, and 3, but really honestly, and it's like this weird order: the central clavicle, medial clavicle, and lateral clavicle. So where is it? Where is it within the clavicle? Is it in the middle? Is it on the inside portion? Is it on the outside portion? And by far the most common ones are the ones that are in the middle, the central clavicle. And then I think we're becoming a little more aggressive about fixing these than maybe we had been not too long ago. But still, you can actually accept more displacement or whatnot than you would anticipate. Typically with these guys, with the NFL players, you're probably going to wind up fixing a little more quickly than you would with the average individual. And they tend to do well, usually for the most part. Like, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. But for the most part, you have the fracture, do the surgery. There's a few different versions of it. And then, but essentially you're just lining the bone back up, putting something on it, a plate. There's some rods. They didn't always work great. But you're getting it back together and letting it heal. And then there's a little more severe version of this where it's closer to your sternum, closer to your chest, so the medial ones. And then there's this the type 2, which are kind of out at the end, where typically they're not that bad, but they're subdivided based on where they break relative to where those other ligaments I was talking about, the coracoperpendicular ligaments attach. And there some of them are just what we call notorious non-union machines, like they just don't heal quite as well or quite as predictably as you would want.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's a lot of variation to this particular. This is one of the ones where the devil's in the details. Christian Kirk has a clavicle fracture. If it's your standard run-of-the-mill central fracture, out for the season. I don't expect it to impact his career whatsoever. I think he's going to do fine, right?
Yep.
But if it's one of those other ones, if it's type 2B or one of the ones on the outside, then he may have an issue with it down the line. Or if it's one of the medial ones, he may have an issue with it down the line. I don't know anything additional. My gut is that is probably your standard run of the clavicle fracture.
I mean, the mechanism at least. Look, he got tackle, fell on the tip of his shoulder, came up in a lot of pain, got walked off, he was taken out of the game. Obviously,
these are miserable. I've never had one. Have you ever had one?
Yes, but I don't remember. It happened at birth.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you don't remember that?
I don't remember that at all. No.
But they're pretty miserable for people when it first happens because one, you can't do anything with that arm, and then people will talk about like. Even trying to open the door with like your other arm puts enough stress on that side. So but they start to knit pretty quickly, 10 days, 12 days, 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, like you start feeling a lot better very quickly.
Right. Yeah, and it's just one of those things where, like you said, they are very debilitating. I've seen a few of them.
Yeah. Early on.
Yeah. Like, you just see them all the time, and like when you get them, they're pretty obvious too. Like you just go on there, you go up. Like I've only seen them in my career in football, up the shoulder pads, go walking down and just crunch, 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 crunch. Oh, okay,
You know
that's it.
Yeah,
that's all we got.
Yeah.
You know, like okay, we've got to go fix it. And it's like, I think it was back whenever Aaron Rodgers did it, he had one before. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, Nick Foles, a couple of them, and it was like, you know, it's one of those things where like, yep, you got to go get surgery. And the one that I had I looked pretty jacked up in my opinion, and we went and saw someone who specialized in fractures. You go, no, we can let this heal non-surgical. Non-surgical kid did fine. He took his time and healed really good, and that was it.
It's surprising how well some of these will heal. Yeah, especially in younger patients.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those things, and I think that's, you know, that's why I love in my world of like, you get taught certain things in a certain way. You get these timelines. Then you just meet various doctors. I've met all kinds of physicians in my career.
Different approaches.
And different approaches, different things. And
art
it's
of
like
medicine.
The art of it, right? Like the art and the science. And then they do something a little different. They try this, a little that, and they suggest this, and then it works out. And like, oh, so that's an option. Got it.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah.
And then you just keep on, and you just build this wheelhouse of all these different treatment options. And you can try to kind of attack everything a little bit differently, or you know, you're just more ready for different scenarios, which is crazy. I've
tended to be fairly non-aggressive about these, but then every now and again you get burned and it doesn't heal, and then that part's tough.
Yeah. That's the downside of it sometimes, but then when you're right, you're like, yep, I did that one right.
See? Yeah, I told you.
Anything else?
I don't know, man. Some good stuff.
We went all over the place. We've been rambling for a little while here.
We have such good trauma stuff just waiting.
I know. We got this trauma stuff sitting in the back burner. We like, you and I could chop it up and talk about it, but we want to get someone who specializes and really go into the details a little bit. Yeah. We got stuff.
We might even revisit some of the, this clavicle stuff.
Right, exactly. And I think that's really important. Coming soon, folks. We might revisit some stuff that's happened earlier in the year. I'm just going to warn you now. But again, I think the purpose of our show helps a little bit of the educational standpoint. At least at my end, we've talked to residents, fellows, and different people who are in med school who listen to us. And I think it's helpful to go, even if it's a different case and it's a little older, to bring that topic back up and to dive in. Yeah, circle back, because these things won't happen that often.
Yeah.
Like, they don't happen that often. When they do, they make headlines. They're big news, but we don't want to do it. We want to do it justice and give you folks and all our supporters and everything the right people to talk to, so you can get some really good inside scoop on it.
That's right.
So before we go ahead and close out our tab for this evening, we're going to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Virtual Orthopedics and Spine. If you have runner's knee or dog walker's hip, they have a doc for that. Yard work, back, and laptoppers, they also have a doc for that too. Virtual Orthopedics and Spine has over 120 providers, over 20 PT and rehab facilities, more than 25 surgical centers all across South Jersey. So find the right specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho. Shout out to Neck of the Woods Brewing Company, giving us the best beers in all of South Jersey for our show. And then lastly, Timber Productions and our guy Kyle out there helping us put this stuff together, because Dr. Frey and I wouldn't be able to do it, and we would just give you guys some crazy product that probably wouldn't be as good as it is. And
looks professional.
It looks so good. So hopefully Kyle helps us out with our little camera mishap tonight, and we'll see you guys next.
I left my camera in my car.
It's okay. No worries. And thanks again, folks. So give us a quick follow on all our socials, and then we'll catch you next time. Thanks again.